Thanks for watching Heart and Homestead with Dawn. I'm Dawn, and today I'm outside in my tomato garden. We're going to be making seasoned tomato sauce today. I've got a couple of requests for a good seasoned tomato sauce recipe. And the first thing that I want to tell you about making a good tomato sauce or even a tomato puree base is you need to start with a sauce tomato. These tomatoes that we're growing right here are called plum tomatoes. They are oval in shape and they have a lot of meat to them versus a slicing tomato that you might use on your sandwich that has a high water content. So step number one to creating a good tomato sauce or a good tomato puree is start with a good sauce tomato, like a Roma. That's what we have here, Roma. There are many different varieties. Find the one that you like best, but it needs to be a sauce tomato. Does that mean that you can't throw some other varieties in? No, it means that the majority of the tomatoes that you use to make your sauce need to be sauce tomatoes. So you ready to start learning how to make tomato sauce? Let's get going. We have harvested 45 pounds of plum tomatoes, and I just want to show you the process because a lot of you have asked me for how to can tomatoes, or tomato sauce. So this is how we do it. Step one, harvest your tomatoes and give them a nice little bath. This is just water, okay? Once they have soaked in water, I give them a little wipe with a cloth, and then they come over here to the colander. Once they're in the colander, we're going to take them out and inspect them. If there's anything, any blemishes on them, like this is half rotten, I'm not going to throw the whole tomato in the garbage. I'm just going to cut that part off, right? So now I'm going to show you that process. So we see here we have a beautiful tomato, but it has one little blemish here. What we're going to do is we're going to cut the blossom end of the tomato off. You want to have a nice sharp knife. One of the worst enemies in a kitchen is a dull knife. So a nice sharp knife, and we're going to cut that blossom end off. We're going to quarter this tomato just like that. Have a nice sharp paring knife. Now, if you can see the inside of this tomato, this white filament here, we want to get that out. That is the part that's going to make your sauce bitter. Sometimes people will leave that on and add copious amounts of sugar. I prefer to just cut that part off, and then I'm putting it into my colander. That part that was rotten here, I'm just going to go ahead and cut that right out of the tomato, and I'm going to use the rest of it. No reason to have to throw away an entire good piece of tomato for one bad piece. Very helpful to have people helping you. My mother-in-law is here helping me, but she's behind the camera right now. Now, what I want to show you here is that I have a strainer, all these tomatoes in a strainer, and the reason being is that tomatoes have a lot of water, and that's going to make the process of turning it into sauce a little bit more difficult. So step one, put them inside a strainer when you cut them, because right there you're going to get some water that you can just dump out into the sink before cooking these down to turn into tomato puree, which is what we're going to use to make our sauce. Okay, so we have one colander full of chopped tomatoes, and we're going to go ahead and walk them over to the stove. On the stove, I have 3 pots. This one is empty. This one is empty. This one has 4 quarts of tomato sauce processing. So I'm going to go ahead and dump these into one of the empty pots. I dropped one down here, you guys. Okay, just like so. And you know what? I think I'm actually going to dump half of them into this pot too. And I'm going to tell you why. What we're going to do with these is we're going to start cooking them down. So the less there is in there, the faster that process will go. And then as we chop more, we'll just keep adding and adding and adding. So one of the things I want to say about this is that you want to put your flame not too high in the beginning, because there's no water in there. And I don't want to add water. Some people do add water to the bottom of their pot, but to me, that is defeating the purpose. What we want to do is make a nice thick puree. I'm just going to keep a good eye on them, coming over and stirring them often to make sure that they don't stick. You don't want your tomatoes to stick to the bottom. Another thing you could do is get like a masher and just mash some of them to get some extra juice out, and that way you will avoid burning in the bottom also. And look how the tomatoes have cooked down. Can you see how they're all nice and soft? And all that juice on the bottom? Amazing, right? I didn't put any water in there at all. Oh, we want to get that black thing out. I don't know what that is. That should not have been in there, you guys. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and add some more tomatoes on top of that and mix them in really well. And we'll put the other half in this pot over here. And we're going to keep on doing that until all the tomatoes get cooked down enough to pass through our food mill. See how all of the tomatoes are nicely softened, the skins are coming off from them, but look at all that juice. See all that juice that's in there? Okay, so there are several different methods of the next step here. One is you can just take this and put it right through your food mill, juice and all. Of course, you're going to use a slotted spoon so you get most of the juice left in the pot, and then you add your tomato puree that's milled back into the pot and you let it cook down and cook down and cook down and cook down. However, I don't have that time because I just don't. So I am going to strain it. Most of that juice is just water. I'm going to start ladling it into my double strainer. You to see all of the juice that we got out. So that is pretty much all water. However, it's actually filled with vitamins and nutrients. So don't throw it down your drain. I'm going to go ahead and put this in a bowl jar in my refrigerator. And guess what? You can drink it the way that it is if you happen to like that flavor, which my husband does. Or you can use it to make rice, right? Instead of water, use this. It'll add a nice flavor to your rice. You can also use it as a base for making soup. So many different uses, so don't toss it. Make sure when you strain your tomatoes, you save that juice. And now we're gonna go ahead and put them in our food mill. This is a KitchenAid. They have those Victoro food mills with a really big hopper. I don't have one of them. I have a very old one that's missing a part, but my kids got me this attachment to my KitchenAid. I absolutely love it. You just put it on a speed of 4, and then you're gonna put your tomatoes in the hopper here. The tomato puree will come out in this bowl, and the tomato seeds and pulp will come out in this bowl. I want to stop this for just a second to show you two things. One, to show you this puree, how it's already got substance to it because I strained out most of the water. The other thing I want to tell you is that this pulp, once I strain a whole bunch of it, guess what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to put it right back in the hopper because there's even more that will come out. Ready for this? You can run it two or three times until you start to see it come out nice and dry and you're satisfied with it. And then you can compost it. You can feed it to your pigs if you have them. You can feed it to your chickens if you have them. Don't let it go to waste. There's a lot that you could do with the pulp as well. Okay, here comes some more. Take it up. Down. Generations and generations will know how to do this. And down. Okay, so we are getting ready to turn our tomato puree into tomato sauce. Before I put the onions and garlic into the pan, I want to show you something. This is a stainless steel pan. A lot of people don't like to use stainless steel. They use more Teflon because they're afraid they don't know how to use it. But here's a way that you can make your stainless steel non-stick. Come on over and take a look in this pot. So I have the flame on, and this is just a bottle of water. I'm going to squirt the bottom of the pan with the water. Can you see how the water is beading? If you see that water beading, then it's hot enough to go ahead and put your oil in. If when you spray your water, it just evaporates, then you don't want to put your oil in yet. But ours beaded, so we're going to go ahead and add half a cup of olive oil. This is extra virgin first cold press olive oil. To that olive oil, we're going to add 6 cups of chopped onions. And this is your preference, the size of the onions. We like our sauce chunky, so we're putting the onions in a little bit bigger. So we're gonna let them cook until they get translucent. Then we're gonna add the garlic. One thing about making sauce, and pretty much every recipe, is you wanna add your ingredients over a course of time. You don't wanna throw them all in the pot at one time. So first we're gonna cook the onions down a little bit, then we're gonna add the garlic and cook that a little bit. Then we're gonna pour the tomato puree in. After that, we'll add our salt and oregano and basil and all the rest of the good ingredients that go into making homemade sauce. Okay, so the onions have become nice and translucent. I don't know if you can see that. 12 garlic cloves we're gonna add to that, and we're gonna let that flavor mesh together there. I'll cook that for about another 2 minutes, and then we're gonna go ahead, take our tomato puree and dump it right in there. All right, so just a little side note here. At this stage where the onions and the garlic are sauteing together there in the pot behind me, the recipe calls for, and many people will put their raw tomatoes right in with that onion garlic mixture. And then as the tomatoes cook down and get softened, they'll run that through the mill and then cook it down, cook it down, cook it down. I don't prefer that method, and the reason being because all of that water that you saw me drain off previously dilutes the flavor of the onion and garlic. So I prefer to just pass the cooked tomatoes through the food mill first, and then take that tomato puree and add it right to those delicious onions and garlic, then add all of my spices and seasoning and make a yummy tomato sauce. Okay, so here we go. The onions and garlic are ready, and the first batch of tomato puree is going in the pot. Beautiful. That splashed me, and it was yummy. Okay, now we gotta cook down some more. This pot is gonna be full before the end of the night. We're gonna have all 45 pounds of tomatoes in here, pureed, sauce coming, and canned soon. This is looking beautiful. I have the rest of the tomatoes cooking down over here. I'm about to strain them and then run them through the food mill. But before I do that, I have added 2 tablespoons of oregano, 6 bay leaves, 1 tablespoon black pepper, 1 1/2 tablespoons sugar, 1/4 cup of salt, and optional would be 2 teaspoons of crushed red pepper. We don't prefer that in our household. So now I'm just gonna stir that all in. The sauce is looking good. Can't wait to try it. Hey, what are you doing?
I'm trying it.
How is it? Is it yummy?
Really good.
You're dipping bread in there?
Yeah.
That's a good Italian girly. Wait, are you double dipping?
No, I'm dipping on the side.
Okay. You sure? So look at the sauce. We cooked it down, and look at the consistency of it. I had to transfer it to another pot because that's also my hot water bath canner, which is what we are going to use to can the tomato sauce. So I want to show you the process now. Come over here and take a look inside my pot. You're going to see that there are 7 jars in there. 4 of them are filled, but 2 of them are not. And so what I do is I start with all 7 jars partially filled with water. You see that? And inside of the pot, about 2 inches of water. And I have that on a low heat. And the reason that I do that is because we don't want to put hot sauce in cold jars. So keeping your jars nice and hot before you put your sauce in it is a definite must, okay? So you take your hot jar, dump out all of the water, come on over here. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice to each quart, 1 to each pint if you're making pint-sized jars. And then we're gonna fill the jar with our sauce up to 1/2 inch headspace. That's pretty high, that's almost up to this top ring right here. The other thing you wanna remember when you're making sauce is stir it up a lot before you put it in, because the sauce tends to settle, like if you have onions or herbs or garlic in there, or even if some chunks of tomato will settle on the bottom, and you'll have inconsistencies in your jars if you don't mix it up every single time you fill a jar. Also, the oil will pool on the top of the sauce, and you want that to be mixed up nice through the whole batch, not just one jar. So there we go. That's about 1/2 inch headspace, which is going to be this second line right here. It's just touching it, so it's perfect. You want to have a nice cloth and a pot of boiling water. This water was boiled and I shut it off. And the purpose of that is to clean the rim of your jar before you put your lid on. Super important. You do not want to have anything on the rim of your jar before you put the lid on, because that will prevent you from getting a good seal. Look, even with all of my precaution, there's still sauce on this cloth. So you just keep on finding a clean, wet part and just keep on wiping until it comes off clean. You can use vinegar if you prefer. I've always used hot water. It's the way I learned, and it's the way I do it. It's the one thing I'm pretty neurotic about, is making sure that there's nothing on this rim, because the worst thing in the world you want to do is spend all this time making sauce and then have it not seal properly. Okay, once you're satisfied with the cleanliness of your rim, you're going to go ahead and get your lid lifter, get one lid, get it on the jar, and then get your band, fingertip tight, and then back into the pot with the rest of them. So now I'm going to go ahead and add water so that it is 2 inches above the top of the jars. We're going to bring that to a boil, and then we're going to let it, we'll turn it down just a little bit. We want it to continuously boil, but not as high as it might be when you first start off. And then we're going to set the timer for 40 minutes. Once that 40 minutes is done, we will shut the flame off. We will let it sit for about 5 minutes before we remove our jars. And I'll show you that process too. Okay, so 40 minutes has passed. Now it's time to take them out. So when you take them out, you don't want to jostle them too much. Lift them directly up, and you can gently tilt them to get some of that water that pulls off on the top up, and then set it down. What I have is a towel, and underneath my towel, I have an old cookie sheet so that my counter doesn't get ruined. And then these are going to get tucked in for the night. Look how beautiful they are. Oh, did you hear that pop? I don't know if you heard it. Alrighty, so fast. One of my favorite noises. So there we go, there's 7 of them there. While they were boiling, I sterilized more jars so that I can fill them up with the rest of the sauce. I'm going to tuck these in. So I don't really know scientifically how necessary this part is, but this is something every Italian grandma does. It's also something that my mentor did when she showed me how to can, and the purpose is that they don't cool down too quickly. So I do it, I tuck them in, and then I'm not going to touch them for 24 hours. Okay, so 24 hours, the tomatoes have set, all of the lids have sealed, and the way that we know that is they're a little bit sunken in on the top here. So now we're getting ready to put them up for the winter. So the first thing you want to do is take the rim off. We do not pack away our tomatoes with the ring on. And the reason being that if the seal gets compromised and the ring is on, we wouldn't know it. So we take all the rings off. You can reuse the rings, so keep them in a little Tupperware container or Ziploc, whatever you use. Second thing we do before we pack them away is we have a nice damp cloth and we wipe the top and the outside of the jar. And the reason that we do that is because when this is sealing in the hot water bath, and the air is releasing, sometimes a little bit of liquid will come out of the jar with it. And the very first time I canned tomatoes, I went downstairs to get a jar and I noticed that there was some fuzzy mold growing on the outside of the jar. Thankfully, the inside wasn't compromised, but that made me realize that you really do need to wipe them down before you pack them away. Once they're all wiped down and nice and clean, label, label, label. Never forget to label. Use a permanent marker. They do sell real pretty labels that you can use. You can even write on the lid since you can't reuse that. I just put the label on and then a piece of Scotch tape over it to make sure it stays on really well. And there you have it. We did 7 quarts last night. I've got another half a pot that I'm about to can now, and then another 45 pounds coming up. So if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Please, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, subscribe and share away. Thanks for watching. Have a blessed day.